Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 104 of the ACL Falcons UK podcast. We are a little bit depleted this week. It is just me and Liam, so you'll have to put up with our faces and voices for the next hour. Mark and Cal, understandably, at this time of year, are busy with festivities. However, me and Liam could not miss the opportunity to come on and talk about the first place Falcons. It feels like it's been a while since we've been able to say that after we dropped the bag ourselves. So we may as well get straight into it. We're going to review the game from the weekend, discuss Penix and Cousins, look ahead to the Commanders game. And I suppose it'd be rude not to cover whether we think we can make the playoffs or not a little bit. So we will get going. Liam, how did you think last night's game went?
I think we could say, in the main, as expected. I mean, I know, from a result-wise in particular, most people expected us to beat the Giants. Obviously, with some pessimistic fans after the last few weeks that maybe expected less, but on paper we should have beat the Giants. We expected to potentially, like we did with Vegas, would we go ahead and batter them almost? We're not. Obviously, with Vegas, we're expected to beat them comfortably, and it definitely was not comfortable at any point. The Giants, different story. It was mostly comfortable, which is what we expected. I think we played very well on the whole on different sides of the ball. And we did our job. That's what all we could ask for at our end at this point was doing our own job. If other teams won or whatever, it happens, but we did our job. We sort of demoralized the Giants a little bit. They're not gonna fight back too hard when they get in a certain position. We do that. I was impressed. I was very happy at the end of that game. Nervous about another game that was coming later that day, but happy about ours.
I think rightly so, though. There's a lot of people on social media saying, oh, it was only the Giants, and previously to that, oh, it was only the Raiders. But ultimately, you can only beat who's in front of you. So if we weren't to have beaten them, everybody would have been like, oh, you lost to them, but we beat them, and it's nothing but a win's a win. So it's a little bit null and void.
It's the mother as well, wasn't it? I know, the result, it would have been a bit of a travesty to not beat the Giants in general, but we were expected to be a much better team than the Giants, and we delivered on that as well. We didn't just scrape across the line like we kind of did against Vegas. We actually looked quite good and put up a lot of points, conceded very few against the Giants, which is all you can do. Like, we expected to beat them comfortably, and we beat them comfortably.
Admittedly, it was more down to the defense than the offense.
It was.
But But you can't discredit it. It's a team game.
No, and that kind of it's one of the sports where different things happen in the game because of other factors. Like because we got some defensive scores and kind of got that lead, we get less aggressive on offense, so we're less likely to deliver more points on offense because we've already got a buffer due to the defense. So it's just the way it goes. Like, it's not to say that if it was a tighter game, I still believe our offense could have delivered a similar amount of points if we had to turn it on. We just didn't have to because of the situation of the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think ultimately all we needed to do was get the job done. At this stage in the season, when we're chasing the division, it really doesn't matter how much you win. And like you just said then, with the defense playing so well and getting us those points, it kind of took the pressure off Penix a little bit. I mean, we were clearly utilising the run game pretty heavily anyway, as you'd imagine, as you'd expect. However, them getting those extra 14 points or so was just a nice little bonus because it meant he wasn't being relied on to have to ping the ball 40 yards and find people because we weren't chasing a game. He was just allowed to find his feet. And I think ultimately he got the job done. Not spectacular, but he looked tidy. He looked pretty sharp. He found some good balls. So how are you feeling about his performance?
I mean, I think he did a very good job in the circumstances. Yes, there'll be tougher tests for him, but it's your debut, regardless of who you're playing against. It's still your professional debut as a starter, at least. There's a lot riding on the game. It's not like he's coming into a nothing game. It's a game with basically our season on the line. And nerves can easily hit anybody, and sort of like forget how to play, and anything could have happened. But he did kind of exactly what I was hoping he would do.
Yeah.
Performance, like, it wasn't highlight reel, and he wasn't like launched it like incredible throws, but that wasn't really what was required of him.
No.
What was required of him at this point is to just make good decisions with the ball and be clean with the football. And if we was clean with our run game and with the way that the Giants play, we just had to beat them with a good, clean performance.
Yeah.
Realistically, we're going to beat us is if we turnovers and errors would have the only going to get him. So I imagine the game plan was exactly that: just run the ball, pass the ball clean, take the easier options, take the shorter throws, build momentum, and beat them down that way. And that was kind of what he did. Like, put some really nice throws that I really liked.
Even playing that steady game and not really relying on the wide receivers too much, you're still 202 yards and a 66.67% completion rate, which isn't too shabby on your debut. Obviously, starting debut. Couldn't have expected much better from him in terms of easing into a team that at that point was in a really bad state as well. Of course, we beat the Raiders last week, but prior to that, 4 losses on the bounce, it kind of, I'd imagine it leaves the dressing room and the locker room a little bit unstable and a little bit disjointed. So coming into that kind of environment as opposed to a winning environment probably has big implications on it as well. And go on.
No, go on, finish that one and I'll carry on.
I was just going to say, and we kind of have to caveat that some of the balls that he threw should have been catches, and I ain't just referring to the Pitts one, which ended up being an interception that shouldn't be his. There was at least 2 or 3 other pretty comfortable catches that should have been made. A couple by Mooney. I think there was one by London in there as well. So he wasn't. His skill players weren't really helping him too much bright and early, especially in that first drive.
That first pass, his first pass was an absolute right to the chest of Ray, and he dropped it. So
wasn't expecting it to be so good.
No, when it comes to me now, maybe. But no, I think what I liked about his performance was just that something similar to what I was saying last week about Kirk, where on those first and sort of second downs, he was taking an aggressive pass into a tight window when you don't need to do it at that stage in the game and on an early down. What Penix seemed to do was a lot of the time he'd look. It's easy, you could tell he'd seen something, but made a second decision, check down to either the running back or just a short receiver, take 3 yards and go to 2nd and 7.
Go again next time.
It's just the best thing to do. 2nd and 7 is a lot better than turning the ball over. So
here it is.
I just loved seeing that, just in going, you know what, I'll play it safe and we'll build. We've got the run game, we've got the ability to pass it where we need to. Just keep the ball moving, and that's for me what the best quarterbacks do. They don't always throw these incredible passes. Sometimes it's just the decision that they make to take the easy pass, get a few yards, keep the momentum going, keep the ball, and he seemed to do that from the off, which I liked.
Well, on top of that, we saw his ability to keep the ball alive as well. There was one play, I can't remember what quarter it was in, I want to say the third, where he was pressured and it looked like he was definitely down and out for a sack. And by some miracle that Falcons fans aren't used to, he's got mobility. And we saw a little bit of movement and he ended up releasing the ball. So, of course, we don't lose the yardage from the sack, which is really nice to see that he's got the confidence to do that already, because he would have been well entitled to just hold the ball tight and roll over with it just so he don't fumble or anything like that. But he clearly believes in himself, which you cannot criticize at this point in his career.
It's an essential thing. I was looking through, actually, out of interest, all the starters, quarterbacks for the current teams, both the actual starters and even the injury replacements in some teams. like how many of them are wide classes mobile quarterbacks, and I think pretty much you could say every single one of them.
Yeah.
Because even your likes of like Sam Darnold or Jared Goff, who are probably your least mobile of the whole group, are actually mobile in terms of they can get outside the pocket. Like they're not really going to run like a Lamar Jackson or a Josh Allen, but they can move around enough to avoid a couple of sacks here and there and make a pass. There's only Cousins, who was a complete, basically immobile pocket passer in the league. Only him, and obviously, I just don't think that's the modern game anymore.
It's not. I mean, we saw that to the back end of Matt Ryan's career, let alone now. We saw how other teams were coming against us and they knew exactly what they had to do, because you had that pressure to someone that can't run. And like we've discussed many times before, if you can't get out of the pocket, then it's just a sitting duck ultimately. But we'll use that as a little caveat. How are you feeling about the Penix Cousins move? Obviously, on this show, it's been a debate for weeks now, like half of the season. So, where are you sitting on it?
I mean, I think the decision to move from Cousins makes sense at this point, and I think I could understand sort of why they did it in this particular game. I did feel like if Cousins kind of had his easy game, or whatever, like no games. He played Vegas. That wasn't going to be a massive threat to us in terms of the result. We should have won. We should have been very effective, and he wasn't that effective at all. We won, we won, but we didn't look like we could have looked on offense. So I think they felt like, well, let's give Penix a chance in a very similar scenario against a team that we're expected to beat, that's got a weak defense. And see if he can produce the performance on top of the result. Kirk got the result, but the performance just wasn't there. Obviously, yes, the defense scored a lot of our points, but ultimately, still Penix was contributed a lot last night, and he got the result as well as the performances on top of that. So for me, I think that decision made sense. I think a lot of fans are calling for it. He just didn't look like it was getting any better for Kirk. He just looked sort of shot in confidence, and we're at a point in the season where we cannot afford anything like that.
Yeah, well, the argument's there that maybe it was a week or two too late as well, because we hypothetically may not have been in this position. The only argument for doing it for when they have done is probably that you bring in, like you just said then, you bring in Penix in at a nicer time. Whereas if you're chucking him in against teams like the Chargers and the Broncos and around that period, it sets your career off on a bad foot. I'm not saying that players don't do it and can't do it, but we're not a franchise that's used to winning. So we're not always the most driven and the most hopeful. So I think throwing a young player in with sky high expectations into a game that on paper we're probably going to lose was wise to avoid.
I mean, Kirk's, it's kind of, it's one of them where it's not like we had a decent sort of veteran out there who's like, replaceable with a rookie. It was a guy that we paid a good chunk of money to with quite a big reputation in the league. So you're going to be hesitant to move away from that. Like, if this was a cheap veteran quarterback who was just holding fort while our rookie got up to speed, they'd have changed it because they've gone, we always plan to do it. I don't believe they ever plan to change to Penix this year. So they've just obviously gone, well, he's got all this money. He's a proven guy. Roll with him for as long as they physically can, and then eventually, made the decisions to move away, which I imagine still was a tough decision even at that point.
Absolutely.
Something had to be done. Like, it just wasn't really getting any better.
And I think people overlook the fact that benching a player is such a large thing anyway. Exclude the contract, but there is no logical time. So we're on a pretty good streak. We were 6-3, and we lose a game. So you don't bench him after one loss because one loss can happen. That's absolutely logical. You lose another game and you think that's also not unacceptable. I'm not talking about the individual games, just the quantity of games. Then you lose your third, and that's when your brain starts going, do we need to start to consider? But based on the performances from Kirk in like the start of the season and then moving into October when he was in top 5 of every metric for all the quarterbacks across the league, you think, surely no, in this 4th game, he can't continue. Like, how many times do you just keep letting him off? And I think that's probably ultimately why they gave him the Raiders game, because one, he probably knew he could win it even on a bad day.
Even on a bad day,
Yeah. And then it kind of a little bit of respect to him based on the fact that he's not going to bow out on 4 consecutive losses. I'm not saying anyone is owed that as such, but I just think it seems like a bit of an honourable thing. Obviously, sport is not that forgiving, but it probably was worthy of it. We've just been very fortunate.
It wasn't the result. The losses were one thing. Like we could have had 4 losses, and he played decent football, but we just got picked in close games and defense didn't perform, whatever it is. It wasn't like that. He cost us most of those games with turnovers. That was the difference. If he'd have played decent and we were just other elements were affecting it, it was so heavily on him, which is what I think made the decision.
Yeah, if the team were getting 21 points a game, 1 turnover, but a decent amount of touchdowns, and it was just unfortunate. But no touchdowns, at least 2 turnovers per game. You can't justify it for very long, can you?
No.
Anyway, this is a positive show. We are top of the South. We performed pretty sharply. I've got a few honourable mentions that we'll skim through. So Bijan with 94 yards and 2 touchdowns again. What do you think his ceiling is? Because I tweeted it out the other night and I stick to it. He could go down as an all-time with fitness and with a franchise around him, because physically he is one of the most agile yet powerful yet fast players that I've ever seen so far. He's a unicorn. So none of this, all these other tight end unicorns. He's a unicorn. It's insane how versatile his play is. Where do you think he is at the moment?
I mean, I'd have him probably in the top 7 backs in the league right now
already.
Like as if even against the veterans who have obviously proven I'd still have him in that top 7 right now, which is he's already there's some very good running backs in the league. So to be in a top 7 is incredible anyway. And obviously he's probably the youngest on that list, or he's certainly one of the youngest on that list. Which shows that ultimately he can only progress further. He's just got every tool that you could ever really ask for in a running back, and that was very obvious even at Texas, where they could use him in so many different ways. Where he could, he can catch the ball, he can play as that receiving back, he can make guys miss. He's also got enough beef about him to go through some tackles. His injury record's pretty good. Like he kind of had everything that you could want. And that's why we also took him, was because positional wise it wasn't really what we needed, but there's just nothing else that made enough sense at that time to go away from like a potential generational sort of talent. So you thought, you can't have too many running backs. Almost like you could, if you've got 2 or 3 good guys, that you can still make it work. So it made sense, and I think his ceiling is sort of right up there with some of the top guys. Really, I think he could go very, very far. It's just about momentum now. If he just keeps it going, avoids injuries, I think he'll go pretty far. That's always the thing with running back. His longevity. How long can you do it for is a big question nowadays.
Yeah, we've seen it with the likes of Todd Gurley and people like that. Where
he was incredible. He was
unbelievable. 3, 4, 5 years.
Had him, the best offensive player in football, Todd Gurley, at one point. Like people would call it above any running back, any quarterback, any wide receiver. He was the best offensive player in football. That's what people would call him. And then he just goes bang, gone.
Yeah,
that's the position. But then you've got likes of Derrick Henry, who takes so many hits. He just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah,
so that's what you want him to be like. that's who you want to sort of mimic, as a guy who can just keep going into the 30s and still be an incredibly productive player. And I hope, if he is that, he's got that longevity. I mean, what a player you can have for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only was Robinson top quality, Mooney was a favourite of Penix's on the night. Again, we've said this many a time over the last 17 weeks or whatever, but that turns out to be a steal now. There was some skepticism around it. There was some skepticism around the contract and things like that. But he's proved himself to be a more than comfortable. I don't even know what you want to call him, wide receiver 1 or 2, because technically he's a 2.
He's a 2,
but is he really?
He's a 2 probably on the roster, but he's a 1 in terms of production.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's no discredit to London whatsoever. London's been
he's had a good season.
Brilliant again.
Moody's is very good at those sort of 10 to 30 yard games.
Yeah.
Like, he's not often like when we sort of signed him, he was heavily being used as like a downfield threat in Chicago, as if in most of the balls he sort of like got was 30, 40 plus yards, trying to get over the top, like deep threat sort of guy, and he was missing out like quite often. And we kind of like brought him down a layer in the way that he plays into more of an intermediate guy, just finding the little pockets, and he's just excelling at finding these pockets of space where he's almost nobody around him, and he's very good ball in hand. So it's just completely suiting his game now, rather than just going. Mooney gets targeted 2-3 times a game, most over the top. That's all we do with him. He just runs forward.
Yeah.
All Chicago we're doing, just run down the sideline and we'll force you now and again. Like, we're just using him in a completely different way, and now he's just showing what he can do.
We have got a little bit of a name for ourselves, repurposing players over the last few years. If I'm going to pick any positives out of the Atlanta Falcons, we seem to get a few coups and revitalize them a little bit, whether that's down to the GM or coaching or a little bit of mixture of everything. But I got to credit us with that. I won't dig into it too much because he's been brilliant all season, but Drake London, again, is an unbelievable blocker over anything in relation to, yes, he runs powerful, he runs hard. Sometimes he runs like a running back. There was a few plays yesterday where he was dragging people along with him. But then you look at the Robinson touchdown and he's got his man absolutely locked down so that Robinson can make that touchdown over to the left-hand side. He was going nowhere. He's a big guy, I know that, but it's also not every single wide receiver is built for that sort of game, and he's built for it.
Some of them don't have there's a lot of wide receivers, I'd say, with his build, as if in, physically strong and powerful, but they don't have the mentality to block. They have the physical attributes, but they don't have the aggression in the block. They want to catch balls. Like, they'll go and make an aggressive catch and use their physicality then, but when it comes to blocking, they're kind of like, I should be catching it, not blocking. Drake London's just like angry and aggressive on every single play. Like he's like George Kittle in the tight end thing. George Kittle loves blocking just as much as he loves catching the ball. Like, he absolutely loves it. And Drake London's just like that. He's like, you can see it. He just loves going at the guy to block.
Yeah, like he doesn't actually want to let go. He's just like,
no, it's like, I just want. That's the aggression you need. You need to be real. To be a blocker, you need to have that mentality of, I want to go out and actually stop this guy right here.
That's your touchdown.
All I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and he's got that. That's a massive undervalued asset in any wide receiver. Is the ability to make those blocks. And he's vital, and he's a good ball catcher too. Yeah,
absolutely. Little hats off to the O-line yesterday. Jake Matthews with a 91.7 rating. Keep going down. Lindstrom with 84.6, and it's just a really steady O-line performance, which was absolutely required. One, with Penix making his debut, but also with him being a left-hander, which kind of we thought there'd be a bigger implication on the line, but it seemed pretty steady. It didn't seem to affect us too much, or not from my side anyway. I don't know if you saw anything different.
No, I mean, I don't know enough about sort of some of the blocking schemes to whether they would drastically change anything because the quarterback is a little more mobile. They kind of knew what they had to do with Cousins because he had to basically protect those sides because he wasn't going to go outside. He had to just block that inner circle essentially, didn't they, in the pocket. With Penix, maybe they can obviously adjust some of their schemes and be a bit more agile. If they sort of like shifted to the right, shift to the left. Penix can go with them because he's got mobility, so maybe there was some of that. But ultimately, it absolutely helps to have a mobile quarterback. Your offensive line ratings will probably go up because of it, because obviously sacks will be avoided and things like that. But they didn't allow many pressures. So in general, and we know how effective the run game's been over sort of the last 4 or 5 weeks, and that's the O-line. The O-line is the biggest part, even though the running backs obviously are vital in that. The O-line is absolutely the biggest part of any run game. The O-line. If you don't create those gaps, there ain't nothing to hit. So.
No. Well, that's why Bijan had his photo with the O-line after he got his 1,000 yards. He's nice little.
Create a hole. If he's got the hole to go through, it doesn't matter how good he is. He's going nowhere. Yeah.
Absolutely. And before we move away from this game, it would be awful of us not to do a little segment on the defense. Jesse Bates with a pick, Judon with a pick.
Well,
a weird
whatever that was. Yeah.
I don't know what you want to call that. 4 sacks again, I think it was.
Was it 4? Wow.
I think I could be wrong, but I think it was 4 again. Massively improved in the last. Ironically, all these games that we've lost, the defense have been the best part of our game. And they've just looked really, really sharp. Jesse Bates is the only player in the NFL with 4 or more interceptions and 4 or more forced fumbles. He's nicely paying off his bumper contract, I think. There's been a little bit up and down, but that is just the nature of our team. So I don't want to discredit him too much when he's probably a Pro Bowl player when you look across the league.
Yeah.
Is there anyone you'd want to pick out? I know there's a handful that were.
I think in terms of not just this particular game, but I think Everkate is somebody who's come on. I think he had one. What game are we on now? How many have we played?
We've 15? Played 15. Yeah, sorry.
15. Yeah. So and he had 1 sack in the first 10 games.
Yeah.
And he's had 4 in the last 5.
Yeah.
So that change,
sharp incline.
That production has gone up. And he's carried on. He's had a sack in the last. I think he's had a sack in the last 4 games now, 1 in each. I think it was. He's obviously developing and somebody who's being used a little bit more.
Yeah.
He's got 5 sacks in total now for the season, which you'll think is an amazing number, but it's progression. So they are coming sort of later in the season. Like if he can sort of carry that momentum throughout the rest of the season and into sort of next season, then we might have a decent pass rush on our hands there. Which is kind of come out of nowhere a little bit. I kind of felt he was a mid sort of guy.
Just a steady.
He might be developing into something a little bit better than I first anticipated. Then we've got players like obviously Kaden Ellis who are just producing all season. And I think we've got the safety sort of in particular Bates who's just been awesome. I think we're probably a cornerback away from a very good defense, I think.
Yeah, I think so. AJ Terrell was unlucky yesterday. He had what I thought was an interception, but the ball was just out of bounds. I was a little bit annoyed by that one. I thought it'd be good for him to find a little bit of form again. Not that he's been poor. We've just been a little bit flat. That's all.
Yeah, he's just dropped off a little bit, hasn't he, compared to previous seasons. He was a bit more sharp. He looked, we are kind of our second, third corners are all hit and miss up and down. Some games you look decent, some games you look terrible, and we need to obviously address that. But that's not a terrible position to be in if you're sort of like your pass rush is starting to develop. and you've got a good linebacker core. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Little shout out from Mark for Zach Harrison as well. Says he's starting to look like he has a little bit more purpose. I think that's the case for a few players. Not only Harrison, a handful of players off the special team seem to be getting the odd snaps here and there and looking that little bit sharper. So it's good to find that we're starting now, 15 games into the season, starting to find those other contributors that like drag you through those games a little bit more. Mark has also done a little shout out to Patterson, our new kicker. Yeah, saying that he seems steady enough. Admittedly, yes, he did miss his first one.
Yeah, I told him that I'd give it up on him at that point. After the first one, I'm like, cut him. But I mean, he reacted well.
Yeah, he did. I was the one, hands up. I said, time to bring Koo back. Of course, he's on IR at the moment, so we know all the technicalities. But that first one did worry me a bit. But then
he kicked everything else.
Yeah, and also when you sit and think about it, if you've basically been out of the league for a year, in terms of actual playing, that first kick, the nerves must be insane. Like, yes, you're a professional athlete, but it must feel absolutely bonkers. So we can allow that. He dinked a 52-yarder, didn't he? So we're all good. We're all good. Yeah. Not too concerned by that as long as we can keep ticking over. Anyway, after our game, something really, really exciting happened when I went to bed. It was not that.
I was going to say, where are we going now?
I went to bed, closed my eyes, and when I woke up to see that the Cowboys had beat the Buccaneers. If you'd asked me to put any money on that game and that result, even though everything in my soul was saying the Cowboys will win it, I didn't actually think it was going to happen. I just was putting it out there. 26-24 didn't even mean anything to the Cowboys because they can't make the playoffs anyway. So I respect that even more, that they're still grinding like that with no Dak Prescott and a busted up team. What was your reaction when you woke up and saw that?
Yeah, well, I did my usual thing and I avoided the result. I didn't even check it. I just didn't even look at my phone. I went and watched the full game to experience it, either the pain or jubilation.
Absolutely criminal to start with, because you could have watched that hour of football and it could have resulted in basically the Falcons not being able to remotely reach the plaplayoffs. So, hats off to that. But go on, I'll let you carry on.
Yeah. So I watched it. I had some belief in the Cowboys after watching them last week. They looked decent. It was just about whether or not they would play enough for it. He started very nicely, and they found, as soon as they started like finding that rhythm again with Cooper Rush and CeeDee Lamb, my hopes went up. Yeah. And then, I realized, the run game wasn't working for them, which is kind of like the same old season. But then, the more CeeDee Lamb got into the game, and the more, it sounds crazy to say it, but like every time they got a field goal, I just, wherever he is on the field, I just think Aubrey will kick it every single time. Yeah. Like, the man is an absolute machine of a kicker. Like, he's just relaxed style. It's like 58 yards. He just chips them like a pitch and putt.
It's like nothing, isn't it? It's just
chips it over from 58. It's like, and I was just like, you know what? He's gonna, even if every time they stall on a drive, which they were doing because their run game was quite ineffective, they would cause like 48, 58, 52. I was like, they're long field goals, but I just had so much belief that he was just going to ping them all over and get enough points and make the Bucs chase it. And they chased it. They weren't bad, the Bucs, by any stretch. But as it got tight, and then there was that touchdown, which was like wide open touchdown. I was like, you know what? Like, they're gonna come back here. Like, they're gonna win it. And then
they're gonna have it.
That fumble. And then I was going crazy at that point. I just really believe that, like, after I knew they were up for it, the Cowboys, after I saw they were playing well and they were up for it, I thought they could do this. Like, this is going to be a good game. They could definitely do this.
Yeah.
I just thought, the Bucs might steal it. And I was like, that would just break my heart at this point if they just nick it at the end.
Yeah.
But, the Cowboys held on, and we're back in the driving seat.
We are, and we'll use that to tie in the whole next section. So we, of course, face the Commanders next, which is a massive, massive game. On its own, out of context, that is a massive, massive game in terms of where they are in their development and where we think we should be. But then you add in the fact that they're still in the hunt for the playoffs. We're now in the driver's seat, but with the Bucs behind us, with arguably 2 easier games than our 2 games, although there is one in common, of course.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the Commanders? Because personally, I tend to try and be the positive one, but I think that's a hard game. And when we've both got playoffs on the line, ultimately down to this game, that's a heavy ask of a team that I think on paper are better than us at the moment in time. And not only on paper, they're just performing very, very well.
Yeah. It's going to be incredibly tough game. They're doing a lot of good things, the Commanders, that people, didn't expect them to do. It's ultimately going to come down to what we sort of allow, or what Daniels kind of can produce. Yeah. Like most of this year, he's been pretty spectacular. He's had a few wobbles of games where he can't get going and get any momentum and start flowing. That's what we need. We need to get him off a rhythm. Get him a bit stuttering and just not quite developing into the game, and that's when we've got a really good chance. If we let him get into his rhythm and the way he's been flowing around the field this season, it's going to be incredibly tough for us, I think, to score enough points to top them.
I think that's where the problem lies as well. Earlier on, we had a little conversation about the development of quarterbacks and dual threat and everything like this. Daniels threw for 5 touchdowns and still rushed for 81 yards against the Eagles himself. That's dynamic. He threw for 258 and rushed for 81. And that's against
picking up. The Eagles.
Yeah.
He's so good at picking up sort of like 5 to 15 yards on those third downs by just running to the sideline.
Yeah.
It's just because most of his runs are not usually that he's not like a Lamar Jackson usually.
Yeah, they're not aggressive.
He did run a big one yesterday, I think, but most of them are 10, 12, 15 sort of yards when you've got third down, that you're 3rd and 7 or whatever it is, 3rd and 6. This is your time to get them off the field, and he goes and rushes 10 yards down to the sideline, goes out of bounds, moves the chains. It's how do you stop that?
Yeah,
very, very difficult.
It is, and it is concerning because even though our defense has been the better side of the field for us in the last few games, it's not something we've really had to face up to in recent weeks. We've not really played against any aggressive running quarterbacks for a little while. Obviously we played the Chargers, but even then Herbert wasn't really going for that kind of game. So it's going to be an interesting one.
There's a chaos yesterday with he's got 2 touchdowns and 70 yards.
I was going to say I saw that off just 5 receptions as well. So that's an average of 14 yards and then 2 touchdowns.
And 2 touchdowns on 5 receptions. Yeah,
not bad.
He's supposed to have been very good for them. Which that means we've got obviously McLaurin, who's a top 10 receiver probably in the league.
Yeah,
it's a lot to handle, but if we just somehow get him off his rhythm, just don't let him get whatever the game plan is. Just stop him getting into a flow.
Yeah,
and I think we can do it, but there's no illusion that that's incredibly a tough game at this stage of the season with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing as well. Like Daniels is so far into his debut season.
Developed now, hasn't he? Like he was like that from the start, but he's kind of
admittedly he was, but like he's at the stage where he's not really a rookie anymore.
He's ready to go. Obviously,
like 15 games in, even 10 games in. Even though you're a rookie by label, you know what you're doing. You know your team scheme. You know your men. Whereas Penix, obviously, heavily utilised Mooney, found London a few times.
Yeah.
Used his running backs the majority of the time by scheme, you'd imagine. So it's a little bit of a mismatch in terms of development, but probably in terms of just overall season performance as well. The fact that Washington are actually in a position where they're trying to secure a playoff spot after that start they had is absolutely insane, because they were absolutely flying at the start of the season.
They were done. But the Eagles have just been so good with whatever that streak was. Yeah.
After we beat them, that was it. They were a different team after that. To be fair, if I got beat by the Falcons, it'd probably oh
my god, we
didn't make my choices.
Yeah. So we're unlucky really that they kind of the Commanders are sort of not sort of tied it up or anything at this point of the season, just because of the the division and situation that they're in. Like, it could have been a game where they sort of relax a little bit, but they're absolutely not going to be doing that.
No.
Dan Quinn's obviously there. He knows, so obviously it's a different regime now and everything's different, but he will know some of the sort of like things that we're doing about the team. But ultimately, it won't really come down to anything like that. It'll just be big play. It'll be big plays will decide that game. One or two big plays on either side of the ball will decide whoever wins that.
Yeah. I've got Penix for a rushing touchdown, and then 2 in the air, 1 to London and 1 to Mooney. So do with that what you wish.
That would be nice. Yeah.
And not to Kyle Pitts, might I add. Sorry, I've not really thrown that in there, but whatever that catch to throw to interception was, never want to see it again. Diabolical.
No, thank God. What was that?
Right.
Yeah.
With that being said, I'm not going to do our score predictions for the Commanders game because it feels like bad luck. We're top of the South with 2 games left. It's in our own hands. We can only rely on our own team. But what are you leaning towards in terms of our playoff ambitions? So, of course, we've got the Commanders this week. Late kickoff as well. So we'll have seen what's going on around the league.
Yeah.
And then we have the Panthers after that, whereas the Buccaneers have the Panthers this week and then finish the season against the Saints. How are you seeing that matchup?
I mean, I think that weirdly, I didn't expect to be saying it at this season, but I think the Panthers are a bigger threat to the Bucs than the Saints.
I agree.
They look a lot better than they did earlier in the season. They're coming off a win, which is kind of annoying because they're the team we also play.
Yeah.
But even though the Panthers have improved a lot, and I think they'll be far more capable and challenge us and the Bucs more than maybe we expected too early in the season, I still would expect the Bucs to overcome the Panthers and the Saints.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can rely on the Bucs.
No, I agree.
I just don't think we can. Not with those 2 games. They're too winnable.
Yeah. The only glimmer of hope that I have in regards to the Panthers is that at the weekend they ended the Cardinals' playoff hopes.
They did. Yeah.
So even though it doesn't really make sense, I'm just hoping they've got that little bit of grit between the teeth and they're thinking, you know what, we've had a bad season, let's just ruin everyone else
and everybody else's hope. Those thinking they can only ruin one of our hopes again. Well, no, I mean, if they could ruin the Bucs' hopes and ruin it back.
I was going to say they could beat the Bucs. We think we're in the clear, and then they could beat us.
Yeah, beat us.
They'll go through, but it wouldn't. Yeah. So
they could.
I mean, I'm just going to pop Paul's comment up here. Evening, fellas. Is there really going to be a Christmas miracle of the Falcons getting to the playoffs? Watch us beat Washington and lose to the Panthers. Well, weirdly, that's kind of what we were just alluding to. So, I'll get Daniel's comment up here. Do you think the Falcons can get into the playoffs? Christy, the curse is broken, but now it's for the key thing. I'm going to say that the Falcons win both games, but I'm going to say we beat the Commanders by a field goal at the end. And Patterson, in his second game for the Falcons, is going to have a walk-off. He's going to be like that.
Well, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But he'll go down in Falcons history for
just folklore stuff, wouldn't
it? 22 games.
But I think whether I believe it in my soul or not, I think I'm going to say Falcons win both games. I've not seen a playoff season with the Falcons yet. I've never even seen 8 wins until last night. And I've just got that little bit of belief that we've been poor for so long now, like 6 years, maybe 7 years, debatable. It's got to come good at some point. Everybody deserves a little bit of a playoff run. The Bucs have had it 4 consecutive years now. The Saints are already out of contention. The Panthers are out of contention. We deserve it. We deserve some joy. So 2 wins for the Falcons. Therefore, it doesn't matter what I think happens to the Bucs because we're all good. What are you leaning towards? Depress us.
No, I mean, I do think it'll be incredibly tough, but I think I've seen enough wobbles from the Commanders this season to think that we can beat them. Like, I've seen them shake and I've seen them struggle. And we need that needs to happen for us to win. But
I agree.
Because I've seen it happen multiple times this season, I believe it can happen and we can put them onto that wobble and do our job in a close game. And I do think it'll come down to something like a fumble or a special teams or it's going to be something like that.
Yeah. So a really minor detail.
I don't think it'll be a smooth game at all.
No. Because the nerves will be so high in all the players. So imagine when a ball's being rocketed at you and stuff like that. Easy little misplacement of hands or a little fumble or it's got
there's so many factors like penalties, big penalty, holding calls when you've done a great play. Like there's going to be, I can see it's something like that changing the game. Like one big moment that we'll be discussing happened and changed the game. Hopefully in our favour, but I just feel like there's going to be that moment.
Oh, God. I don't like it. I'm nervous. No. I don't feel good.
No, I don't. It's miles away. And I feel like
it's awful. It really is. Well, that is pretty much it. I don't massively have any other business unless you want to briefly dip into the rest of the playoff contenders. Just get your take on who you think is going to go on either side. So on the other side, of course, you've got the Chargers and the Broncos currently leading the way. But you've got the Colts, Dolphins, and Bengals all still in with a mix. But as you'd expect with this point in the season, I think the expectation is that Chargers and Broncos lose all of the games, and any of the other 3 below win their remaining 2. I feel bad for the Bengals. I feel bad for Joe Burrow and Chase and a handful of other players, but won't dig into it too much. They have single-handedly deserved playoff football, and they've ultimately been let down by the defense. I'd love to see them make that final push or at least take it to the final week, but I don't see it happening. And the Broncos deserve it. They've overachieved this season. I didn't have them on to be so successful, so let them have it. And the Chargers absolutely showed us how to play football. So again, they probably probably are worthy.
Yeah, I mean, it's even the Colts, I'm surprised they're sort of still in the mix, aren't they? Are the Dolphins still in with are they eliminated?
No, they're still in with a chance. They have a 7% playoff probability.
Right, okay, I'm going to say, I cannot believe they're still in the chance, but
it must be some mad combination of wins and losses and stuff like that. I've not looked at the technicalities of them each, but they're on the bubble.
I think for me, they're too strong. Like, I'd be very, very surprised if either the Bills or the Ravens were not in the Super Bowl for the represented the AFC.
Ooh, that's interesting. I just keep going really boring generically, the Chiefs and the Lions, but I don't think it actually is going to be. The Chiefs aren't the best they've ever been.
I think the Ravens will either. I think the Ravens or the Bills will represent the AFC, and I think the Lions could make it for the NFC.
Yeah. The only thing that concerns.
I still feel like the Chiefs. I don't know why.
I know it's hard to overlook the Chiefs, isn't it? But it's like, again, dynasties come to an end at some point. Like, you have to lose at some point, don't you? The only thing that concerns me about the Bills is their defense is banged up, banged up. And you can get away with that on and off throughout the season because the caliber of team you play in are up and down and up and down. I've not looked at the seeding, and I'm sure it's probably not set in stone just yet because of the 2 games that are remaining, but you probably can't have that luxury. We saw what happened. They played the Lions, didn't they? And that kind of set a tone of what injuries does for you. So that's an interesting side.
I think they'll. I don't know how sort of healthy they'll be come sort of playoff time, or as if in mid playoff time. Josh Allen obviously can basically take over a game and win them a game.
Yeah, no, he can. He's unbelievable.
He's unstoppable when he's on that kind of form.
Yeah,
and if he can turn it on throughout the playoffs, I think they can make it to the Super Bowl, even if they still have issues on defense. I feel like he could overcome them. Obviously, it only takes one off game from him for them to go out, but I think they could do it.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Detroit on the other side, in the NFC, I think people would say Detroit or the Eagles, because the Eagles good form, but I still don't think they've been that good.
No, and also Hurts went down, didn't he? I've not seen how bad that is.
Concussion protocol. He's in protocol,
so he's for a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know whether he'll. But obviously, come playoff time, I think that. Will be,
he should be all right again.
Fine. I know the Vikings had a very good season, but I just can't see them.
No, I don't think they've got
doing it.
Although, if it stayed as was now and we got through, I think we'd play the Vikings at home.
Okay.
I think that as is. I think that's how it falls at the moment in time. So in the next, So that'd be. They'd arguably be one of the teams that you'd say, you know what, it's probably not that bad going. I know they beat us early in the season pretty heavily, but there's no nice teams to play in the playoffs, is there? Everybody changes. So
I mean, the Rams are probably the surprise package, I would say, in the
the
NFC.
And as it's their 3rd seed as well, if it stays as is. So
I didn't anticipate they'd be. Obviously, people expected the 49ers to take that division again, and but the Rams have kind of capitalized on a down season for the 49ers and done some decent stuff. But I do think I'm going to say that it's going to be a Bills Lions Super Bowl is what I'm going to guess.
Nice. Okay, I like that. It would be exciting from a neutral perspective should the Falcons not be able to make it, of course.
I'm not thinking that far ahead yet with us. To make it into the playoffs would be absolutely amazing this season.
One week at a time. But no, that would be an interesting Super Bowl. Comes away from your expected teams a little bit. Not that Lions weren't expected, but one of the last 5-6 years, the Chiefs have always been one of your expectations. So it's nice to spice that up a little bit. And on that note, I think unless you've got any other business that we didn't cover.
No, I mean, we've just got to. We're just waiting until game day now. With series of emotions and stuff until then.
Yeah. So it's a nice little 1:30 a.m. kickoff for us, which is rude. As an English fan, that's rude.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I am in work the day of that game, as in the morning. So it's at 1:30. I am in work that day, but I'm not in until 11 o'clock. and so I'll be able to go to bed at like 3:30.
Yeah.
Have a few hours kip and then go in later.
It's the 30th, is it, the game?
It's 29th into the 30th.
Yeah.
So it's the 30th.
I'll be off work, so I'll be going free to stay up for that one.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be doing the same. I'm staying up for that 100%. Right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching yet again. I'm sorry that you've been stuck with mine and Liam's faces for the last 55 minutes. Mark and Cal have not graced us with their presence, but I'm sure they'll be back next week, hopefully with another win under the belt and still in the playoff hunt. But we'll discuss that as and when, because we know what this team is like. If you don't already, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Can subscribe over on YouTube. You can follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You can, just find us everywhere. Do your thing. This show will be live, available to watch back on YouTube immediately after we clock off, and it will be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts within the hour. So thank you very much for joining us. We are the first place Falcons. We are top of the NFC South. 2 games to go, 2 playoffs to get to the playoffs. Can we do it? I have no idea. No idea. Thank you for watching, and we will catch you all next week.